That's true. Well, good morning, good morning. I feel like I'm doing chapel. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight through the fog and the rain and the dismal weather. Thanks for being with us tonight. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Joel Landskroener. I'm the Executive Director here at Lutheran High School. And I'm so glad you're with us tonight. There's a lot of things we're going to talk about with our strategic plan. And of course, we all know one of the big things we want to know about is what is this adding 6th, 7th, and 8th grade thing all about? What's up going on? And so on the website at Mayor Lutheran's website, I'll put the link up in just a minute, all of this stuff will be on there for you. So if you go to the Mayor Lutheran website, and I believe it's going to be under the About tab, you'll be able to download all these materials that I'm going to share with you tonight. So you can share it with somebody else. We're also streaming this tonight live, and it'll be recorded, I believe, as well on YouTube. So for all of you on the YouTube viewers, welcome to Mayor Lutheran High School through the magic of our technology, and of course it can be there to be shared with others as well who couldn't make it tonight and maybe can't watch at the moment. So anything we have tonight, this is all public information, public knowledge there. It's all for us to kind of learn more and more about what our board of directors and our delegates and our whole school community, what direction that we're heading. So I'm really grateful for you to be here tonight. I'd like to open just with a quick devotion. This is great. So in, I believe it's, I forgot to put it up there, but Matthew, is it 17? Doesn't have the chapter there. Or 18, maybe it's Matthew 18. Sandwiched in between Jesus' discourse on divorce and a conversation with a rich young man who tried to justify himself by his behavior, Jesus, the writer Matthew, he decides that he's going to squeeze this little piece in. And I just think it's golden how in our busy, busy lives, all the things going on in life today, right? We just had an election yesterday, and we have jobs, and we have families, and we have mortgages to pay, and we have, many of you are church leaders in your own right at your various congregations. All these things are going on, and in the middle of our day, we stop and think about kids. Some of us are up to our necks with kids. I remember a period in our life where all I thought I did is chase kids and change diapers. And some of us are empty nesters now. We go, where did those days go? But kids are a blessing. In the Old Testament, we hear a lot about children, about training them up to be the way they should go. We're told in the Psalms that children are our heritage. Children are always lifted up as assets in Scripture, never liabilities. And so tonight's reading from Matthew, the children were brought to him, that's Jesus, that he might lay his hands on them and pray. The disciples rebuked the people, but Jesus said, let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven. And he laid his hands on them and went away, because Jesus had a lot to do. What's interesting here, my friends, is you and I are in this very brief passage. You and I are in this passage. Hey, wait a minute, Joel, I didn't live 2,000 some years ago. What are you talking about? The reality is we are those little children. We have been brought to Jesus, perhaps by our parents or grandparents. Perhaps our parents enrolled us in a Christian school, a Lutheran school, perhaps, so that we could know and meet Jesus. So so that we could know what that laying on the hands and the blessing of knowing Jesus is all about. And like these kids here, they didn't really know what was going on. They had no choice. Their parents brought them. They didn't make a decision and then come to see Jesus. They brought them. And we are like those little children. We too have been brought to Jesus in our baptism. I have been blessed, my wife and I have been blessed with 3 grandchildren, and a 4th is on the way. Should arrive, Lord willing, on Christmas Day. Which is ironic, because that was the day when I was part of this little drama. Because on Christmas Day in 1960, that's when there was a death and a birth in my life. I was brought to the waters of baptism, and my old Adam was put to death, and the new Adam came to life. Isn't that amazing? We still in our lives today play in this passage as little children who come to Jesus. And it is still why we do what we do in our Lutheran schools all over the world today. We believe bringing children to see Jesus is the most important thing they can have. We believe children are assets and not liabilities. We believe the power of the gospel cuts like a double-edged sword through bone and sinew, and we know that gospel does not return to us empty. We know that, we believe it, and everyone who came out tonight has proven that this is important to you in your life. Probably the most important thing you have in your life is the faith that's been given to us so that we see Jesus, and he has laid his hands on us, and he has brought us to be his children through no work of our own, but by his grace alone. And when he went to that cross and he died on that cross, he died for little kids and old kids and kids of all shapes and sizes, colors, and ethnic groups and nationalities and everything. He died for us on that cross so that all these little kids could be blessed forever, including you and me today in the year 2022. Christ did that, and of course, we don't have a dead God. Jesus isn't dead, he's alive. He rises from the dead on that first Easter. What great news that is. And our little children can understand that. They may not understand it in its fullness, and I don't know if any of us will ever understand it in our fullness, but we meet Jesus face to face one day in heaven. What a day that will be. So we just celebrated All Saints' Day last Sunday in many of our churches. What a great day that will be. As we look to the future at Mary Lutheran High School, when those guys and gals started this school 61 years ago, and of course they talked about it long before that, they understood what this passage meant. They understood that children need Jesus, adults need Jesus. And today, we prepare Christian leaders to bring the next generation to Jesus so they can be blessed, so they can live for him, not only here on earth, but into eternity, where we will see him face to face. What a day that'll be for all of us. Praise God for Jesus, who loves even little children, and even you and me. Let's pray. Gracious Father, we thank you for making us your children. We thank you, Lord, for our baptism, for salvation won for us on the cross. And Lord, we thank you for our schools that teach this lesson in 1,000 ways every day to lots and lots of children. Lord, we ask you to bless our time here tonight, that it'll be useful and fruitful, that we will continue to walk together with each other and with you. So Lord, make this a time that's informational, make it a time that helps clarity in our thinking of the ministry here at Lutheran High School, and Lord, also make it a time that draws us closer to you and to each other. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. So I do want to talk to you about our strategic plan. If you don't plan, then you just simply plan to fail. And so we have approved a strategic plan at the October 3rd delegates meeting. And real quickly, I'm just going to go through this very quickly, and I do want to be out by 9 to respect your time. So we did a SWOT analysis, which is a strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat analysis, and also a magic wand discussion, which is the best question of all time. If you had a magic wand, time, money, manpower, anything was no problem, was absolutely no limits, what would you do at Mary Lutheran High School? Pretty fun discussions, right, when you do that. And a very difficult discussion, because we're always used to limits, right? Or I just not have enough money, enough time, enough people, enough this, enough that. And so we did that with all kinds of groups. With the board of directors first, and we were led through at their annual advance. We don't retreat at Mayor, we have advances instead. Last January, our staff, our community, we had a couple of nights here at Lutheran High for the community come. One of them will never be forgotten because there was a huge storm that night. That came through. Our pastors, our students, we took a group of our students from leadership class, And then we did surveys with our parents, and we got in a lot of information. And we used facilitators, John Branstad. Some of you might know John. His kids graduated from here a while ago, but he has a company called Leadership by Design. And then Pastor Phil Wagner, which I know many of us know Phil, retired from Trinity, Waconia. Phil also does a lot of this kind of visioning things with Lutheran Church Extension Fund. And he, of course, is a good friend of Mary Lutheran, a good personal friend. And he helped lead our staff through this process as well. In July, we presented the strategic plan as we could uncover it to the board of directors. They had a couple of months to read it, and we cleaned it up, we added things, we took things out, we clarified it at board meetings, and in September it was approved by the board of directors, and then in October, early October, October 3rd, the delegates of Mary Lutheran High School approved it as well. And the mission that's in our Mary strategic plan has not changed, right? And here's the amazing thing about our mission. I don't think there's a soul in here who does not know it. Is there one who doesn't know it? Better not be. It's written right in front of you, right? The reality of it is preparing Christian leaders is what we do here, you know. And you know that this mission is on the right track when you ask a kid walking down the hallway, you know, hey, Brian, what's the mission of Mary Lutheran High School? And they'll sit there and they'll roll their eyes at preparing the next generation of Christian leaders, right? It's written everywhere. They know it. That is when you know your mission is where it should be. They know it. The challenge, of course, in that mission is to have a vision of what this looks like as we prepare Christian leaders. And there we go. As a vibrant Christian community, Mary Lutheran's vision is to increase its sphere of influence by maximizing student potential. By God's grace, we'll increase the number of Christian leaders we equip for lives of faithful service by these four things: enhancing the quality and relevance of opportunities for students. That's in how well we teach our kids, how well we serve our kids, how well we take care of our kids, and make sure that what we're doing here makes sense in the year 2022. We don't have typewriters anymore today. But a few of you who attended Lutheran High School remember where the typing room was, right? So we want to make sure it's relevant for them. But especially as we work towards a future of a world that doesn't even hardly know who Jesus is. Kids who see John 3:16 on a football game and don't even know what that really means, has no idea what the phrase chapter and verse means, because they've never read a Bible. In America, in our neighborhoods. Expand Christian education locally and globally, and embracing real-world opportunities. That expansion of Christian education is the big thing I think that drew most of us here tonight. Globally, our online school this year is having almost an all-time record year. The all-time record year was 2 years ago during the COVID kind of time. But it seems to be catching up with that year this year. We have kids all over the world, all over the country, and all over our community taking online courses from Genesis Virtual Academy. Becoming known for our personal and effective approach to equipping students for life now and into eternity. I think if you ask look at any of the comments and all the surveys we get in every year, we do a lot of surveys, it is, they love how Mary Lutheran has a family feel to it. I think most of us here would probably, who attended here or had a relationship with Mary, would say it was that family feel, that kind of, being welcomed and being known that made your time here special. And being recognized as a school of unique and vital value at any price. We are a private school, and we operate in a state that has almost zero student choice assistance, right? And so in Minnesota, as in some other states, parents have to really put out to send their kids to our schools, whether it's our elementary schools, whether it's Mary Lutheran. The state of Minnesota does not do much to help us send kids to Mary Lutheran High School. And so that value at price, when those parents sacrifice, and more than half of our kids get student aid, and we know those parents are working hard and sacrificing, it is our job to make sure it's worth it for them. Yeah, you can have a list of complaints as long as you're sleeved when you leave Mary Lutheran, you probably will. I did. I had more kids go through it. I work here. But the reality of it is, at the end of the day, I'm glad they came here and I wanted them in no place else. So value at any price. And so we have a number of essential values. And of course, the first essential value is that we are Christ-centered. Christ Jesus himself being the cornerstone of whom the whole structure being joined together grows into a holy temple in the Lord. Being Christ-centered is part and parcel of who we are. And by the way, this isn't unique to Mary Lutheran High School. I would say that all of our Lutheran schools certainly are the value they share with us all. Nurturing, all right, John 10. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. So we nurture our kids. Our kids come in here with lots and lots of backgrounds. This year, a third of our freshmen did not come from a feeder school. So they came in with values and ideas and culture that is somewhat alien to what we've typically had with our freshmen. And we think and we know those numbers are going to continue to head in that direction. So nurturing is a key part. In fact, I would say, if you ask a lot of our alumni, what's the things you remember most? It was that nurturing. Those special teachers who took them under their wing and helped them out, made them feel special, because they are special. Equipping as well. It's one thing to be nurtured, it's another thing to actually be able to do something, to have skills that you can make your way through life, to add value to your life, and especially to other people's lives. And from Ephesians 4, we are to grow up in every way into Him who is the head, into Christ. And there you can see just a good example of how we are equipping. In this case, our STEM lab and our STEM program. We have a lot of engineers. We have a lot of healthcare workers who seem to graduate from Lutheran High School. It's amazing. And finally, aspiring. In Romans 12:2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. We expect our kids and our staff, myself, all the way with everybody else I work for and work with, to aspire to something better than who we are. And the day we stop aspiring is the day probably we need to close the doors and go home. Because we always are looking for something better, better ways, better things to do with our kids, for our kids. And we want our kids to leave there with a hope for a bright future. And that aspirational hope is our final of our 4 essential values. And so, as we went through all these things, we then listened to a lot of people, and we made a big list up. By the way, when you go online, and you can see the strategic plan is online, there's an appendix at the back that will have all of the, most of the input that we receive from people, comments that we receive from people. It's several pages, in fact, almost as long as the actual strategic plan itself. And, I encourage you to look at those. Obviously, we can't do everything that people want to have ideas about. You got to limit it. So we decided to limit to 5 initiatives that we want to accomplish in the next 3 years. The first one is to provide better care for our workers, give them a better salary. Our goal, it's going to be a very challenging goal, but we want to get starting salary at $50,000. Right now, we're starting salary, if the board approves the budget, we'll be just shy of 40. And so we have our work cut out for us to help take care of our workers and make sure they are taken care of. I think all of us know today, right? We've always known staffing is everything. That's not a surprise. But today, staffing is just so essential and so challenging. And we've got to take care of our workers this way, right? They're doing these great tasks, these great works for the sake of the gospel. So that's our first one. And frankly, I don't think too many of you would argue with this, right? Take better care of our teachers, of course. Number 2 is to create a formal position for our campus pastor and staff it within 2 years. And the reality of this is we had this comment from pastors, but we had this comment from colleagues at Mayor Lutheran. We had this comment from aspiring parents who were thinking sending their kids here. This is something that we were blessed with when we had Stephen Wismar a few years ago, and then the district, Minnesota South District, called him away from us. We are blessed with a deaconess, thank you very much, Deaconess Polzine, and to have a deaconess and a campus pastor as we try to nurture and equip kids is a golden set of blessings for our kids. And so this is a goal we would like to have as well, a campus pastor. And how this all shakes down, these are goals, how these all shake down, there's lots of ways this could happen, lots of ways. One way we had thought about was if we have a smaller congregation in the area that maybe needs a pastor, that maybe we could share that. Or maybe there are other options as well. But right now, the hows are the answers we don't really have yet, but the goals, we absolutely have that. The third one is to work and complete on phase 1 of our campus improvement plan. Our campus improvement plan, when we say that, we mean the outdoors. And what this means is to get that soccer football field complex that we have a design for and have an idea for, to get that funded and to get it done. Essentially what it will do is move the football field down to where the practice field is now. Move a plaza between the right field line of the baseball field and the new football field for our guests and our fans and all that. Create an outdoor locker room so our poor athletes don't have to drag that dirt and mud into this building, or worse yet, spend an hour getting it off their cleats before they come in. So there's a lot of things to this project, which I won't discuss tonight with you, but would be glad to at some other time. And we are actually on this right now. We are working on plans on how we're going to raise the funds to make this happen. So we actually have this process in going on right now. The fourth one is to grow our enrollment to 225 kids in the high school by the year 2025. When we established this goal, this is not a new goal, this was also in our last strategic plan, I had no idea how that was going to happen, frankly. You got to have a good goal. It's just the way we do things. But we live in an area where people move out here for the public schools. And before COVID, they moved out. They were willing to pay a lot of money for their houses to send their kids to the free public schools out here. When COVID hit, it totally changed the game for us. And I think everyone here who's involved in their local Lutheran school, we've all seen the enrollment of our Lutheran schools skyrocket. Families saw what was actually happening in public schools, in their living rooms, at their kitchen tables. And then when the schools didn't open, and we did, families came in. A lot of people thought they would just stay for the year, but most of them didn't. They stayed for the long haul. And so I believe, not that we are happy about COVID, not at all, but I do believe that there's been a change that's occurred among people here, where all of a sudden now values do matter to them. Right? In the old days, we always heard, I went to a public school, I turned out okay. Right? Well, today, I think people are more and more concerned about what's going on in those schools. When teachers have to go to sensitivity training and all these kind of things that they don't need to go to sensitivity training for. So we want to grow this, and we believe by the Lord's blessings. We had an open house last night with 15 families come to it. That's an all-time high in the time that I've been here, by far, 15 families. Several of them were not from our churches, our congregations, or our schools. So I think that's great. And finally, this is why obviously I think it's brought most of us out, all of us out here tonight, is to investigate adding grades 6, 7, and 8. And I know there's a lot of questions. I know I've seen comments on social media. I've had phone calls from people, both pro and con. There's a lot of people who like the idea as well as maybe think it's a bad idea. And our goal tonight, my friends, is to really share with you what we're thinking about when we say adding grades 6, 7, and 8. Okay? And by the way, our board of directors, and we have a few here tonight, our delegates, and certainly myself and the staff leadership team that I have a chance to work with and work for, we all know that the biggest concern is what is this going to do to our faithful feeder schools? What's it going to do? How's this going to work? And why should we stay in the Lutheran High Association if you're going to have the same grades we have, right? Very fair question. So with your permission, can I keep going on? All right, let's do that. So if you would like to find these documents, go to marylutheran.org, the About tab, and then our strategic plan. Is that up, Mr. Bodie?
Yes, it is.
It's all up. Thank you very much. So you can get all this, and please share it. There's no secrets here, my friends. This is all open, it's all for the public, and we're streaming, and you know, again, if you have questions later on, some people are just processors, right? They see something, they just need to think about it. They need to process it. Other people like me think before, or speak before I think, right? Whatever we do, just know that we are eager to hear from folks who have ideas that we haven't thought about yet. And frankly, there's a lot of things we haven't thought about yet. That's just the way we do it. That's why I'm so grateful that you guys are here tonight. So wait, a middle school, Mary Lutheran? What, why, who, how, when? Well, let's jump right in. So what we're going to do here is go through a bunch of questions. And I hate to do this to people, right? You get a PowerPoint and they read it to you. Like you can't read it yourself. You guys been to those presentations, you go, come on, really? But we felt that this was so important. We have about a 6-page document, which again you get from the website, that has these frequently asked questions. And the number one question, very logical, why is this being considered? And for us, essentially, it is this. We need Christian leaders now more than ever. Less than 2% of the middle school age population in a 20-mile radius. And let's get real serious. That 20-mile radius is not a perfect circle because to the west of us, there's not a lot of population. So this is like a D rather than a circle. You go east of us, less than 2% of middle school age kids go to one of our feeder schools. That means 98% of the middle school age kids, mostly to the east of us, do not have a Christian middle school to attend, or do not attend a Christian middle school. Now, why is that? You can conjecture all you want why that is. But the reality of it is, There are 12 Lutheran schools teaching Christian middle school. Why not at 13? And that's our goal. And so we do believe that we will help in a number of ways for the ministry at Mary Lutheran High School, as well as for our congregations and our schools and our community. We're always asking, what is the differentiator at Mary Lutheran? Well, we're an intentionally Christian school, preparing Christian leaders. When I went over to my good friends Dan Beckering over at Southwest Christian, Dad would tell you the same thing. And you went to my good friend Mike Brennan over at Holy Family, he would tell you the same thing. So what's our differentiator? Well, we're Missouri Synod Lutheran. But nowadays, that's not a big differentiator because fewer people are tied into their denomination. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. But that's a way life is today. And so what is our other differentiator? Well, we're in the country, but I suppose that Holy Trinity on Wednesday might argue that with us. We have an online school, which is true, it's a great differentiator, but it doesn't necessarily help us with the enrollment and all the things we'd like to do for our kids preparing Christian leaders here. But maybe the only, and we say standalone, meaning we're not at a congregation or at a church. None of our competitors have a standalone middle school out here. We would be the only one. That's a great differentiator as we want to bring kids to Jesus so they can be blessed. Our curriculum will be Christ-centered, biblically based. It's highly desirable compared to government-run schools, which more and more of their curriculum are sharing things, which I think everybody in this room would probably not be happy about, frankly. I'll take that guess. And many of us would not be happy with some of the things that are being taught in the government-sponsored school. Let's make this real clear, too. I hate the expression public school. We all know what that means, and we use it. Mary Lutheran is a public school. We serve the public at the highest levels. We do. And we are a public school that adds value to our communities and to the world. We are as public as anybody can be. Finally, we're able to maximize the many resources that Mary here to help those kids, to serve those kids in a developmentally appropriate, robust educational experience. That is why we're thinking of this. That's why we're talking about doing this. It's not to get kids from our feeder schools. It's not to make any comments about any other schools in the area other than the government-run schools. We believe with 98% of kids not going to a Christian middle school that there's a lot of work to be done, and we like to take that work on. So that's why. The next question is, why not? Well, before COVID, the Lutheran schools in the 12 Lutheran schools that feed Mary Lutheran, from St. John's Corcoran, First Lutheran Glencoe, down to Gaylord, down to Chaska, out to Chaska, their enrollments before COVID were down 55% over the last 10 years. And we all know that, those of us who have schools, we saw that. We probably weren't real happy. And a lot of us were kind of flummoxed on what to do. And then COVID came along, he did us a big favor, and now our schools, for the most part, are really, their enrollments are doing very well. To open a middle school when our feeder schools were in decline, I don't think was a good idea. But to open it while our feeder schools are strong and their futures are bright, I think is the right time to do it. Do it at a time of strength, and not at a time when our schools are weak. Because when we do that, it's going to draw more people, not just to Mare, but I believe to our 12 feeder schools as well. Because it will become known. It will become known. Also, as we look at the numbers of our feeder schools, most are booming. Some are approaching all-time highs in enrollments. We have schools that are talking about expanding, and there could very well be a point, if our prayers are answered, if we certainly see this heading in the right direction, where our grade schools are going to be running out of room. There are already some schools and churches talking about running out of room. And to have essentially a place where some of those kids could go so they could see Jesus and meet Jesus, this is the time to do it. That's why we want to do it. So what do our demographics indicate? Well, I shared you with that 98% of the kids do not go to one of our feeder schools. Actually, if you take all feeders, count the prep schools, the Catholic schools, we get kids from St. Joe's, for example, the charter schools, in a 20-mile radius, you can see the enrollment, the population is going to grow. There's 17,931 students in a 20-mile radius projected for 2026. That's a lot of kids. Less than 1,000 of those attend non-government feeder schools of all types, Lutheran, Catholic, charter, and homeschool. So the potential seems significant. With our current 12 Lutheran feeder schools enrolling less than 2% of the available students in the region, and frankly, can you imagine what happened to our schools if we just pumped it up to 4? It would be crazy, right? The increased growth will provide opportunities for enrollment growth to our schools, especially community. I put public in parentheses, begin to run out of space due to a growing population, the effects of open enrollment. And so our demographics are very positive for us. There are certain areas where this would not make sense, where the demographics do not play in your favor, where there's not a large population. And I do want to point out to you, when they started Mary Lutheran High School 61 years ago, they had a consultant in the process of getting the school going. And some of you might remember this, maybe if you remember when the founding, if anybody was here around the founding. But I've been told this by more than one of our founders. The consultant said, don't start the school, your demographics are against you, they stink, there's not enough people out there. And you don't tell a Carver County, stubborn German Lutheran, don't do something you have your heart set on doing. So they did. Anybody ever heard that story before? Anyone? I've heard it more than once. And I often think that's part of our culture here. We have a chip on our shoulder at Mayor. We were told you can't start this school. We're going to show them otherwise. I think that continues. That show them we can do it today continues as part of our culture here. So anyway, this is what our demographics. There are additional demographic studies we're working on at the moment. There will be a question here coming up that we are going to be sending out a questionnaire to households that have children in school. Over, I think it's about 8,000 names maybe is what we have, 8,000 addresses. And by the way, through this whole process, we haven't been doing this alone. We have been calling schools and talking to schools who have done this all over the country and in our community. St. Croix Lutheran, Wisconsin Synod School, not too unlike us in many of its makeup and how it's organized, and feeder schools. I started middle school several years ago. And Cleveland Lutheran West in Cleveland just started middle school this year with 70 kids. Now, Ohio has vouchers, and we don't. And so the reality is when we look at our demographic studies and we talk to other schools, we always take into consideration every place is unique. So just because Martin Luther and Northrop started a middle school this year, which they did, doesn't mean that it should be the same reasons that we do it. They did it in part because one of the feeder schools had a hard time getting teachers for that middle school. And he said, let us bring them over to the high school. And that's essentially how their middle school got started. So everything's a little different story. But there are some things that we learn from every school that we look at. And so there will be an additional survey going out, which we, of course, borrowed from our dear brothers over at St. Croix. Have we conducted a market analysis? That's what I just talked about. Not yet, but we hope to have that out and about and have results back by January so we can present it to the February board meeting. How will adding grade 6 to 8 affect the 12th grade feeder schools? This is the question of the year, my friends. And I'll get to this in some real practical ways in a moment, but in our research in high schools, we've added middle schools in Cleveland West, St. Louis North, St. Croix, St. Paul, West St. Paul, Martin Luther, in Northrop, Concordia Prep in Towson, Maryland, where I used to teach. We have found a mix of returns in locations with greatly diminishing enrollments in the feeders. Some schools simply sent their middle schools to the high school, like, for example, St. Louis North and Northrop Martin Luther. In others, few transferred. Most of our Lutheran elementary schools are the strongest they've been in years. I can't say that enough. We do not believe that the draw to transfer to Mayor will be as strong as it was before the COVID crisis, when feeder schools saw significant overall declines, again, 55%, especially after grade 5. And we've seen this in almost every one of our schools, where people will leave after grade 5. And oftentimes you look at the numbers and you can see that happening. Naturally, there may be some transfers, and we would expect that is probably going to happen. We can't say that's not going to happen. That wouldn't be authentic. As there's already opening as families look for new middle school opportunities after grade 5 in many of our feeders. Many of our feeders, people have been looking for alternatives after 5th grade. Now, a lot of people go to the public school because their kid's not going to Mary Lutheran High School, and so they're going to get out, go to the local public school, because they hope to get their kids engaged in that public school somehow, whether it be athletics or drama or whatever. We'd like to have an opportunity and an option if families do that. Now, at our feeder schools, we don't expect that to happen. And we're really sitting tight. It's going to be a 2-year wait to see if our feeders who have grown substantially are going to hold those kids after 5th grade. On some of our schools, it seems that it's been good news in that. Others, the jury's still out. Frankly, we just have to wait a couple of years to see what happens. Will they, supporting Lutheran High and Mayor Association, continue to support us? This is a question our board certainly has, right? Our largest donor are our 12 owners of this ministry. The 12 associations, churches, they provide for us about $300,000 a year to a budget that's about $3.6 million. So they provide probably about 8% or so of our annual budget. Money that would have to come from other sources if our churches didn't see the value and the blessing of a Christian high school. They've been very, very generous through the years. And so there are a number of things that we're going to do. First of all, we encourage our churches to continue to support Mary Lutheran High School. And I said Mary Lutheran High School. Okay, we are not raising, and nor have we raised for the last 15 years, the $55 per communicant membership that full association congregations pay. And we have 5 of those that pay that. We have some that pay half of that, and so they're considered affiliates, but they're still owners of this school. We will not raise the membership fees on ours, and we'll see this again as well. There's a number of things we're going to have in place that are going to encourage families not to come to the Mary Lutheran Middle School. The Mary Lutheran Middle School, real intent is for that 98% of other kids. One of the things we're not going to do at the Mary Middle School is offer the association discount. Why would we do that? You already have a school to go to. And so that's just one of many things which we'll look at in a moment. But we're really looking at our congregational support to be for the high school and only the high school. And it's been pretty reasonable through the last 17 years. Of course, how will we work to not knowingly recruit from supporting schools? And this is a great question. I'm sure many of you had that on your mind. If maybe one of you had that on your mind, I don't know. But first, we're going to charge a much higher tuition in our feeder schools. We just are. What is that tuition going to be? I can't tell you. The board will have to arrive at that decision. We've kind of come up with a number about $9,700 a year between tuition and fees, but that's not official. That's not written anywhere other than you have to start somewhere as you do your financial projections. Does that make sense? That's significantly higher than any of our feeder schools. So that's one, and we believe there will be people who just simply will choose not to. Number 2, will not provide association discount. Number 3, financial aid for students from our existing feeder schools will be greatly diminished. What we don't want is somebody who's going to come from a school maybe where you've got a $3,000 tuition. They're going to come to the Mary Middle School and then expect $6,000 in financial aid. No, that's not going to happen. Does that make sense? So if you're going to come to Mary Lutheran High School, you're going to pay, and you're coming from a feeder school now, you're going to pay the full freight. Because, and by the way, I say greatly diminished. I think when this finally works through, and this is early stages, my friend, for these details, it might very well be there will be no financial aid if you come from a feeder school. Because again, we don't want to encourage that. We've got great feeder schools that we want to continue to see strong growth. We'll install protocols in our admission process to inform feeder school principals as soon as one family from your school contacts us. Hi, Mrs. Jones, do you want to enroll your kid? No kid, where's your kid go to school now? Oh, Zion Lutheran School, where? In there? Have you talked to your principal yet? You haven't. All right, tell you what, you talk to the principal, and then he will give me a call when you talk to him, and then we can chat. That's how St. Croix has done it, and it's worked very well. None of this is, nobody's going to show up at Mare as a surprise, Lord willing, right? I mean, that's our goal as a protocol. Fifth, many traditional families in our feeder schools desire in-school catechesis. This is one of our friends stopped in the office one day. I asked him what he thought about this. He said, you going to offer catechesis confirmation class? And I said, no, because again, we're reaching out to kids who may not even know who Jesus is for that matter. He goes, well, I can tell you there are some people who won't go there because they want confirmation in their day school. Anybody ever heard that before? It's a big deal, right? Well, we're not going to have that. Now, we're going to teach from the catechism. This is a great teaching tool, right? But and we'll get to this. There's a good question tied into this as well. I think that one of our pastors, actually, from our association, shared with me just today. So we will not offer formal catechesis. Finally, we will only market the grades 9 through 12 in our feeder schools and congregations. So if you go to St. John's Chapel, you'll see Mary Lutheran High School posters. You will not see a Mary Lutheran Middle School poster. Middle school will operate, that's the goal here, as a separate school within the school. Because if our goal is to get that 98% of people, then that's who we're going to try to advertise to. So when Mr. Turner comes to our grade schools, he's not going to be talking about the Mary Lutheran Middle School. He's not. He's going to be talking about the high school. When you see the posters, when you get news to your churches, and we send news out every week, every one of our churches gets a weekly email extra full of information on Mary. If for some reason you don't hear about Mary Lutheran at your church, please talk to your secretary or give me a call, and I'll trace it down and see what happens. Because this information that will go to our churches is about the high school. And that's how we're going to try to differentiate that. And yes, that's a trick. That's going to be hard. There's no question about that. But it has to be that way. And so at our schools and churches, you'll only hear about Mary Lutheran High School as we always have. Does that make sense? All right, we'll go on here. What? No confirmation class? What if a child or family decided they'd like to do catechesis after learning about the Christian faith in class? Praise God! That is the goal of this whole idea, right? So when families without a church home ask about, this is a pastor actually gave me this idea just today. When families without a church home ask about joining a church, and we pray they do, we will, with their permission, share the name of the supporting parish closest to their home and follow up with the pastor there to ensure the opportunity to shepherd in the faith will occur. Since we anticipate many students may not have a home church, working with our congregations will be a great blessing for those students and their families. And I think, again, why should our churches be excited about this? I think that slide right there speaks a lot to that. We'll go on. And I do want to be honoring of your time. Will there be a draw of younger students to Lutheran High School for our feeders when a family's oldest child enrolls? This is another question somebody asked me. To create a one-stop shopping scenario, right? Very realistic position. And I will tell you, it probably will happen. Why? Because it's already happened. There's many times, not many, numerous times, the oldest child of the family from one of our feeder schools will enroll at Mary Lutheran. Then they will transfer their other children over to Zion. So it's already happened. Is there anything we could do about that ourselves? Probably not. But it is something that we are paying attention to. That one-stop shopping thing already does happen. But it is something that we pay attention to. And I don't know if we'll be able to do anything about that at all, frankly. There's a lot of things we can take shot, get a really fair shot. This is going to be a tough one, of course. Where would Mary Lutheran hold grades 6 through 8? So now people kind of, okay, you're going to do this, Joe. Where are you going to do this? Where are you going to put these kids, right? And the answer is what we call the 300 hallway. If you remember where my office used to be years and years ago, before the association, we added the addition there, that 300 classroom thing has, this is actually very interesting. Actually, one of my colleagues, I'm not going to point her out because she'll be embarrassed, shared this whole idea with me and made total sense. It was like the scales fell from my eyes. So 300 has 3 classrooms. It has an office. It has a handicap accessible restroom, I think. Certainly have 2 restrooms. And it has its own entrance. In fact, the old entrance, the security still works on it. And so it is a place, it's a little stubby hallway, I call it stubby hallway, that will have its own entrance. It will have its own 3 own classrooms, an office. It virtually will be a middle school to itself, and we won't have to add. Now, who knows? Into the future, and I'm praying this will happen, in the future we will have to build more classroom space, maybe build a separate middle school building. You know why? What was our number 3 or 4 goal? Get the 225 by 225. For those of you, I'm looking at my friend Daryl, I'm going to put you on the spot, sorry. But when Daryl was a student here, how many students did you think you had? Yeah. Whole school. Were you near 300? Yeah, 300 kids. Can you imagine Mary Lutheran with 300 kids, without this wing, without the new addition? Daryl, was that little stubby hallway there when you were there?
No. That was cut when we were here.
Okay, so a little stubby hallway wasn't there. 300 kids, can you believe it? Well, it's a different day. It's unbelievable to me. When we get more kids, we're going to need to expand. We're going to need to expand. Won't that be a great day? That's a problem I pray for, right? So anyway, some other things, people always ask, it'd be large enough for about 75 students. We figure 25 kids in a classroom. The interest in enrollment grades 6 through 8 may require future classroom space, and we'll have to do that. Again, a problem I'd like to have. Gym space, music, art rooms, lunchroom, and other educational recreational spaces already exist. Some of my poor friends have heard me tell this story too often, but I gotta say it again. When I moved to Seymour, Indiana, my first administrative job, they drove me out to a 41-acre cornfield, and they said, Joel, we want you to build a Lutheran high school and make it go out here. It still had corn in it. And I was a dumb old history teacher from Baltimore, Maryland. What did I know about southern Indiana, cornfields, and starting a high school? But that's what they asked me and my family and all the rest of us to do, and we did it. You know what? That's a lot of work. We have all this in place now. All we need is just get kids and teachers and kids. And we'll talk about staffing here in a minute. What about teachers who currently teach in the projected classrooms? Well, they're going to move. They're going to move. Our computer lab and all those things, we anticipate that's going to go to our current STEM lab, which is the old band room, if you're familiar with that, from several years ago. We might have to have some floating teachers. We don't know how this all shakes down. And my poor friend, Mr. Willoughby, who makes a lot of the wheels work, all the gears work here at Lutheran, still shakes his head at this. But somewhere along the way, some teachers will just have to float. I talk to Lutheran high school principals from all over the country. They have tons of teachers who float, who don't have their own classroom to maximize the space of the school. And so that is common. That's likely to happen at this point. Will our association membership cost increase? Again, a question asked of me. No, it will not. It not increase because of the addition of the middle school. It will remain the same as it's been for 15 years. It might be longer than that. Members who may choose to attend their Lutheran middle school will not receive the association discount. By the third time I've said that, the support of our faithful congregations will help us meet the high school's financial needs, with the middle school largely supporting itself. And that's the financial kind of model we have. Why should congregations continue to support us? And this is why. An intentional, vibrant, successful ministry to teenagers is a precious asset to the church. At the cost of a little more than $1 a week per communicant member, the 12 association congregations own and operate a ministry that most on their own would be unable to provide. Each year, almost 200 young people in the halls of Mayor Lutheran hear about Jesus and the salvation he won for them on the cross. They are trained to respond in gratitude to such good news, to be servant leaders for him. I'll stop there. When I go around and the joy of my life, and I love my job, I really do. I'm grateful for it, and I love it. When I get to visit our congregations, and many of you I know have seen me at your churches, one of the great thrills I have, satisfaction, is when they install their church leaders. And I see how many of those guys and gals are Mayor Lutheran grads. I would say it's probably a large number in most of our churches. Boy, how satisfying is that as we prepare Christian leaders for him. Thanks to the traditionally generous support over the past 60 years, Mayor Lutheran has sent 3,400 leaders into the world, graduates as Christian leaders. And here's just a little factoid. 15%, almost 15% of the teachers in the Minnesota, teachers now, in the Minnesota South District are graduates of Mayor Lutheran High School. If you don't think the value of your membership has real life implications, it does. Especially if your kids are in a classroom where Mayor Lutheran High School's graduate is teaching. $1 a week per community member, best investment I think you'll ever make. By the way, I sound like I'm selling used cars. I get it, but I'm passionate about this. I think our churches working together is one of the great blessings. People from around the country are always curious about. They've heard about Mayor. They've heard about the churches that work together to make this happen. And it is a blessing. It's a rare blessing more and more. And we're grateful for that for sure. What about staffing? Will students be taught by existing high school students? You know, essentially, no. Middle school is its own animal. They're unique in their developmental needs, middle school age kids. We will probably have some high school teachers teaching, like for example, PE, Joelle Grimsley, right? Or maybe art, maybe Heidi, an art class, or some of those things. Some of those peripheral kind of electives. But by and large, we're going to have middle school teachers, middle school trained teachers, teaching middle school kids. It's not going to be like high school with younger kids, because that's not developmentally appropriate in the middle school world. What we're kind of looking early on, and do not hold me to this, but we're kind of thinking we'll hire a principal who will be a teaching principal. And you're saying, Joel, can a teaching principal make this thing go? Well, you know, we have 3 schools at least among our feeders who have teaching principals, and they're outstanding school leaders, right? So it does work, and it works well. And then we're probably looking at a 6th grade teacher would probably have a self-contained 6th grade classroom, which is very common. And so no, our teachers will likely not be impacted in a significant way, other than there's going to be more kids on the campus, and they're going to be younger. We are looking at separate chapels, for example, where the middle school would not, for the most part, worship at the same time as high school kids, because you want an appropriate, developmentally appropriate chapel approach for middle school kids, which is different from high school kids. One of the thoughts I've had on that is we have chapel 4 days a week. Wednesday we don't. Wednesday we have small group, we call it koinonia. Wednesdays would be the perfect day for the middle school chapel, because this place is not going to have anybody in it. What will the schedule look like? All those things, those still remain to be answered. How will lunch work? Still don't know how that works. By and large, though, we will work hard to segregate the middle school kids from the high school kids. Now, that makes a lot of sense to us, especially if you have like 6th or 7th grade. And I'll just sound horrible here, but let's say you have a 6th or 7th, 8th grade daughter, and you don't want high school boys looking at them, right? And so the reality of it is, the schools we have talked to, having the middle school becomes a blessing because the older kids have younger kids to mentor. They have younger kids to lead, and those younger kids look up to those high school kids. And it's a great mix, and it's a great opportunity, which is not to say that we're not going to try to keep the middle school as unique and separate and segregated as we possibly can in a different part of the building with different courses and different approaches. We may get an office assistant in there, probably will get an office assistant, and that clerical help will be essential. As we grow, we'll obviously hire more teachers in the middle school. We look for jacks of all trade type teachers in this situation. Whereas in high school, you get a social studies teacher, and that's all they teach, or math, and that's all they teach. Middle school, your teachers will need those who have a little more, a little more to go. Will Mayor Lutheran take teachers from our local Lutheran schools? Since I've lived at Mayor Lutheran High School, we've never, in my time, we have never taken a student or a teacher from any of our feeder schools that work at Mayor. It's happened, but it doesn't before my time. In fact, if you ask anybody in the school leadership team or even on the board, one of my rules of hiring is I do not like to hire teachers from the feeder schools. Why? The blessing of Mayor is a strong feeder school system. What makes them strong feeder schools? Strong teachers. To cherry pick and bring them into Mayor Lutheran doesn't seem to make a lot of sense in my world. Does that make sense? So we're not looking to move up any from our feeder schools to teach at the Mayor Middle School. Now, having said that, we do have an LCMS calling system. We do have a system where teachers can throw their names in at places. But in my time here, it's been one of my rules that we don't want to do that. And I'd like to say, yeah, this will never happen. That's kind of dangerous when you don't even know what's happening yet. You don't even have one kid enrolled yet. But that is not our intent at all. Because we firmly believe the strong teachers, and some of you are here tonight, thank you, are what make our feeder so strong. How many students can we expect to enroll in middle school? If you can give me that answer, I'd be eternally grateful. We don't know. We don't know what that would look like. Until we announce the formation, and we do plan to announce it if indeed the board decides that next year is the year we want to start it, probably in February or so. Every school we study varied based upon their location and situation. Some schools are in states that offer parent choice, I mentioned that earlier. Some are in rural areas, and so they have significantly smaller enrollments. We don't know, but we would love to see 25 students per classroom as the kind of our max. And I'll talk about finances here in just a minute. So what about the curriculum? Well, real quickly here, we anticipate we'll offer traditionally vibrant curriculum in line with Christian middle schools. And our differentiator for free community schools will be the intentional Christian frame of reference and a biblical worldview in our curriculum not currently available in government support schools. In addition to language, science, math, social studies, theology, we'll have electives in music, visual arts, physical education, and I guarantee you that those will grow and change over time. And just think about the more experienced graduates of Mayor, what courses are offered today that weren't offered when you were here, and vice versa. So that will grow. Will there be help for students with special needs? As much as we are able to do so with staff, the answer to that is yes. But you have to understand that Kathy Martin, who I'm embarrassed her, I suppose, maybe, but who is our resource teacher at Lutheran High, is getting pretty close to not having enough room for any more kids. It's a very, very challenging, it's just a lot of hard work. And you might be surprised at this, but and Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think between 7 and 9% of our students at Lutheran High have a learning disability, diagnosed learning disability of some sort. And we take them. By the way, it's one of the complaints we always hear about private schools. Well, you don't take those kids. Public schools have to take them. No, we take them. We take them. And we're glad, we're blessed to be able to work with them. So thank you, Kathy, right? But that is the trick we have is, you know, as we have kids with greater needs, staffing will dictate what we can do. What we can do for that. What about co-curriculars? I know this is a big concern, a very big concern. In fact, we had one of our good friends, you know, shared, you know, that, you know, this whole thing is only about sports. And I will tell you right now, that is not about sports. It is about that 98% of families who aren't sending their kids to a Christian middle school. Mary Lutheran's Middle School will participate with the other middle schools in Minnesota River River Conference athletics, which I know Chris has shared with me. Chris Gustin, our activities director, shared numerous times that that's not a bad thing in their world to have us in their kind of their middle school, junior high athletics. We'll partner with our Mayor Knights as we are able to do so, provide additional opportunities for our middle school age kids. Music, drama, STEM, robotics, other existing programs will also welcome middle school students as they've done for years. I don't know if you're aware of this, but we have middle school kids from our feeder schools in our STEM program all the time. We have middle school kids that play on sports at Mary Lutheran all the time, except for the sports that those schools already offer. Cross country, volleyball, basketball. Now you'll say to me, well, Joel, come on, a couple years ago, you had a student from one of the feeder schools who played volleyball as an 8th grader at Mary. That was a unique situation that was actually brought to our attention by the people from her school. But that is not the standard thing that happens. That was a kind of an outlier situation. The reality of it is we will continue to offer those extra things that your schools may not have. Softball is a good example. We get middle school girls who play softball at the Mary Lutheran softball program. We will still continue to host the MLAA events here. We wouldn't anticipate our middle school to play in it. That wouldn't be what we're thinking because they're playing in the Minnesota River Conference. But we would still, of course, host both the volleyball and the basketball tournaments, which are just what great times those are. And we have a great facility for doing those. With a wide array of co-curricular activities, will that draw students away from supporting schools? And the reality is this may happen, but that's not our intention to draw from those. And I shared the protocols earlier that will really kind of make families really have to work hard if that's what they're going to do. But it's not our intention to draw them away from the same sports or activities. Mary Lutheran already welcomes students from our feeder schools to compete and participate in sports I just mentioned earlier. You can see some of those sports that many of our middle school kids already participate in. So no, we don't anticipate that to happen. Will the wider, on here, do you really expect to open middle school in 2023? All right, that's a great question. That's a great question. And the answer is yes. Yes. We already have classrooms, dining hall, gyms, lockers, theater, and other physical facilities. We have personnel to lead co-curricular activities, recruiting, admissions, financial, fundraising, curriculum, teacher development, maintenance, and the like. Unlike a beginning brand new school from a vacant lot, adding 3 grades is very doable by next fall. It will not be easy, right? Don't anticipate it. Don't read in anything I say that this is going to be easy. It's going to be hard. It's a lot of work. It's absolutely a lot of work, but work well. How much will adding grades 6 through 8 add to the school's budget? Of course, this is obviously this is a great question as well. Can Mary Lutheran afford to add grades? Depending upon enrollment, we anticipate hiring 2 additional full-time workers and 1 part-time worker. We estimate about $200,000 for salary and benefits based upon the average teacher's salary and benefits paid this school year of about $70,000. That's our average teacher is actually about $68,000 and some change. So we just rounded up about $70,000 is what an average teacher, obviously the more experienced teachers get paid more and newer they get paid less, but it's by average of $70,000 and other incidental staffing costs such as an office assistant. Most of the fixed costs are already covered in the current budget. We pay those whether we have a middle school or not. With potential tuition and fees of $9,700, again, it just says potential. This is far from official, but it does kind of give you a ballpark of what we're thinking. For the first year middle school, as few as 25 students enrolled, 25 students now, in 6th, 7th, and 8th, will cover the anticipated costs. So as you can see this, yeah, it's a risk. It's a shot. Adding grades 6 through 8 is financially feasible, depending on enrollment. Speaking of enrollment, how many students in each grade will be needed to actually begin school in August? If enrollment projections fall short, how do you make up the income? When you do a new school, in this case we're adding 3 grades, you do plan to not be profitable your first year. In fact, the school I had in Indiana wasn't profitable for about 5 years. Our online school wasn't profitable for 6 years. But we manage and budget for that because we know that's the case. Now today the online school is highly profitable, and so and the school that we started 22 years ago is doing fine in a state that has vouchers and scholarship tax credits. Boy, Indiana's great. As a startup, we may be able to, we may have to operate the first year with a deficit, and we do have a model that we looked at that may require that to be. We do save from a recent gift that we received that will help us to make up for these shortfalls. It is an investment for the future. In any school startup situation, tough decision is when to actually open the school. That's why we have the best board of directors I've ever worked for. The middle school steering committee, which we have, and haven't really actually met yet, but will be meeting soon, and the board of directors will wrestle with this challenge. How will adding grades 6 through 8 affect fundraising? Anytime you make a significant change in your school, will affect fundraising. We know there are some of our donors who are not excited about the middle school. We know that. A lot of times it's because they just want to know more, like you do tonight. That's why you're here. Our prayers that our many donors will support the ministry of Maryland Lutheran, including grades 6 through 8. We can certainly segregate gifts. If somebody says, I don't want a penny going to that middle school, we can segregate that with giving. We do it all the time. Somebody gives a restricted gift, and we honor that restricted gift. And so we can certainly do that here. We hope that doesn't happen. We hope people see the big picture of a 6 through 12. We've always had a cherished tradition, thank you to the many, many decades of givers here at Lutheran High, of unrestricted giving, where they don't restrict the giving so we can use it where it's best needed. Adding 3 grades worth of families will increase people, by the way, especially if they're from that 98%, will increase potential fundraising, because you just brought 25, 30, up to 75 new families into your family. Every one of those has grandparents, hopefully, right? There is a huge opportunity of fundraising growth with this, which is not to be interpreted, that's why we're doing this. That is not why we're doing it. But it will affect fundraising, and I believe in a positive way for the most part. Our stakeholders in this ministry have been great and generous through the years, and we would anticipate we would continue to do so. How can I learn more? Now we're at the last slide. So there you go. There's my office phone number. There's my email. We will be having lots of things in newsletters, the website, social media. Any of you ever have a question at all, give me a call. And if it's that important, I'll give you my cell number. I'm not giving it tonight because it's going to be on YouTube. The next thing you know, my refrigerator will be running for the next 3 months. Don't need that. But please, if you have ideas, dreams, concerns, criticisms, personally, give me a call or an email or something like that. We know that there's a lot of minds in this whole plan. It's just the way it is. We also know Satan hates this idea more than anybody I've ever met or will meet. He hates Maryland Lutheran. He hates you because you are the children who were brought to Jesus, and Jesus saved you, and you confess that. He hates you. He hates me. He hates this building we're in. He hates everything about what we're doing. He is working overtime to keep this from happening. And you know what? Maybe in the end, we just discerned that the Lord would have us not to do it. Maybe. But I can tell you what, as long as we keep leaning on the Lord and praying to Him and working, talking to His people and prayerful about every step of the way here as we've been, we believe that this will be a good thing. A good thing for kids, a good thing for family, and the largest thing, a good thing for the church. And anything that grows the church, I think, in my book, is a pretty good deal. So that's all I have for tonight. Now, I know there's 1,000 questions on here. Maybe there were a bunch that are answered tonight, but maybe they're not. And for risk of making this look like a scene out of The Office, we do have microphones down here. If you have a question, you'd like to come up, and that way everybody can hear your question on the microphone. Or if you're really kind of timid and don't want to come down front, we probably could bring you a microphone if you have a question. So if you'd like to ask a question, either come up to the microphone, or like somebody said, that we're going to embarrass anybody and make them raise their hand, right? But please, if you have a question, please let me know, and I don't know, a couple of my friends, if you could maybe pop on the microphone. So any questions? This is question and answer time. Norm.
other Lutheran high schools
And middle schools?
added the 6, 7, and 8? And secondly, how many of those have had problems that appear to be almost overwhelming? In other words, how many have been successful and how many of them have found
You know,
challenges to be very, very.
so Norm's question, in case you didn't have a chance to hear it, is how many Lutheran high schools have done this already and what have been their challenges? Correct, Norm? Is that what you're asking, right?
Close enough.
Okay. So here's the deal. Lots of Lutheran high schools are beginning to do this around the country. They're beginning to do it for a different reason than we're doing it, right? And a lot of our schools around the country, their feeder schools, are declining significantly, even in post-COVID days. And so they're starting them to save the middle school. Cleveland Lutheran West, for example, is one that's done that. Others, like I said, Northrop is a little different story there. There they have a local school, and the local middle school just came over to the high school a couple of blocks away. And you know, it's their first year. Who knows how that's going? But I would assume it's going pretty well. Many of our high schools in the country do have middle schools. The largest is Faith Lutheran in Las Vegas. It's our largest Lutheran school in the country. So they have a middle school and high school. They've had it for years. When I was in Baltimore, we had a junior high, 7th and 8th, because all the feeder schools agreed to only go to grade 6. They built the school back in the early 60s. But in the late 80s, the local public school systems all went to the middle school model. So 6th grade, 7th and 8th. And our school then had to add 6th grade because nobody was enrolling their kids in 7th grade, because that's when the public schools, they enrolled in 6th grade. So they added the 6th grade. And I remember the year they added it, was the worry that the feeder kids were going to descend on Baltimore Lutheran. It was going to be the end of the feeder schools. The reality of it, I remember that year, one kid came from the feeder schools into the 6th grade. So Baltimore's had a very successful one through the years. I mentioned St. Croix Lutheran, which is a Wisconsin synod, has a very successful junior high. They did middle school. They just started several years ago. Norm, there was 80-some Lutheran highs around the country. I'm not going to go through every one with you right now, but I will tell you, we're not the only one thinking of starting one right now. There are other schools as well, for all different reasons. Again, everything's local. Answer your question?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Yeah.
You may come up there.
You know what? We don't know how this is going to work. Just ask it now, repeat it for everybody. Is that all right?
My question is, have you had families approach you pending this idea, saying, I would love to be able to send a younger student here? And if the goal is not to pull from the feeding schools, how do you market to those people, those families?
So the question is, have we been approached for enrollment in a middle school? And number 2, how are we going to market away from our churches, right? Which is our traditional strength, right? The first question is yes. Periodically, we receive phone calls from people asking to enroll their kids, and they don't realize we're just a high school. In fact, I live in the neighborhood just up the hill here in Mare. My neighbor approached me during the COVID time because she heard we were opening. She wanted to enroll her 2 kids. They were like the 1st and 2nd grade, right? So we sent them over to Zion where they did enroll, right? So the reality of it is we do know people. We have open houses. We have a lot of people come to open houses with younger kids. I think they realize we're a high school, but they don't necessarily, but they're also younger kids at the same time. Open houses is not just 8th grade families anymore. So we know that there's that piece. It's all anecdotal. I wish I could give you a number, and we don't have that. The second question, how are we going to market? That's the question of the year. We're working on those plans. There will definitely be a lot of online marketing for sure. Probably some old-fashioned print marketing. We don't do a lot of print marketing because it doesn't yield us any results typically. But that certainly will be a piece. We'll also open houses, middle school open houses, which will confuse people. We expect that the marketing piece is probably one of the things that our committee is going to be working on for sure. So that's about the best I can answer for you on that. Other questions? Yeah.
Other than, so you said Zion Mayor is at capacity. Other than them, what other Lutheran schools in the area are full or almost full, based on what you said earlier?
Can you give me a second? I'm going to bring a stat up here for you.
Okay.
And I think that might answer your question. That's a great question, Matt. I love it. By the way, the danger of putting your screen in front of everybody is you see how I keep track of all of my statistics and all of my files. You say, what's wrong with that guy? All right. I'm going to show you where our grade schools are currently with enrollment. Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where our grade schools currently are. Ignore the stuff on the right. This is from our admissions department, so he uses this for some planning pieces as well. But if you look at Zion Mare, getting pretty close. If anybody's from Zion can tell me, and this is K, by the way, we go K8. We don't generally take stats on pre-kindergarten, just because pre-kindergarten is not a highly reliable source to going into the kindergarten. Although many schools are working on it and it's getting better. So I don't know what the capacity is at Zion, but they're at 136 right now. And if you look at those grades, they're all kind of in the mid-teens, right? Trinity, 208. And again, when you look at the lower grades, 28, 22, 26, 24, 23, 24, then you get to 7th and 8th grade, they're a little thin, right? And you just go through all CCLS, and Jeff Balke's here tonight, can speak to this, but their total is 120. I don't know, Jeff, what would be your capacity? Is Jeff still here? At CCLS, what would be your capacity roughly in your building?
Good question. Probably about another 15 kids.
Okay. So, by the way, always remember, we talk capacity, it's always in the eye of the beholder, right? How many people have heard this? When you have a church that's 80% full on a Sunday morning, people consider it's full. Did you ever hear that before? So it is, St. John's Chaska, look at that, 2016 in the kindergarten, 25, 25, 21, 18, 22, 23, 23, 24 in the 8th grade. So now St. John's Chaska also built roughly about 20 years ago or so and have capacity in there. St. John's Norwood, now that one's struggling a bit right now, okay? I'll go down to Corcoran, and Corcoran is kind of, we get kids from there, but not a ton, but look at their numbers at 149. Zion Cologne was in the 20s, just like, anybody from Zion Cologne here? Anybody from that? They were in the 20s just before COVID, and now look at them. They're at 100, they're at 72 right now. They're getting near capacity. To answer your question, I may be driving this pin in with a jackhammer, but you look at those numbers, I think this is very light. And Glencoe, pretty steady there. They got a smaller number of 7th graders. Redeemer Wayzata off the charts. Now let me tell you something else too. When you get nearer the metro area, you get more kids. It just makes sense. A larger population. A lot of the kind of craziness in public schools, which may not have hit out here in a big way, are certainly evident in those schools. And so as you come out west, Howard Lake, a little further west, they've only got 2 8th graders this year. So those schools, and then Manuel Gaylord, by the way, Gaylord, yes, it's a ways away, but we get kids from Gaylord. I believe we have 3 or 4 this year, which is a blessing. So, did I answer your question? Go ahead.
So kind of, and I apologize if you said this earlier, but what is your primary goal other than for any masculine reason, the future generation, by adding 6th through 8th grade here?
Well, that is the primary goal. I mean, that's why we do it all, is to bring people to know Jesus and to get to the, as a missional approach to families who may be reached for Jesus. I mean, our kids coming from the feeders too. By the way, I'll test our feeder schools, like many of our feeder schools, half of the kids are no longer Lutheran. And if you talk to our feeder school principals, but by the way, we meet regularly. Every other month we have a meeting with all of the principals from the feeder schools. Now, whether they all attend is a different story, sometimes they just can't because they're teaching or whatever, right? But we do meet with them and we stay in constant contact that way with them. But with, wait, I started talking, what's your question? One more time, I'm sorry.
So I asked what the primary
The primary purpose. That is the primary purpose. Is to try to get to an audience that right now is not sending their kids to our feeder schools because they're attached to churches. There is an angst for some people that do that. There is another piece that we've received, and that's not in the frequently asked questions, but there are people who will come to a feeder school. I've had anecdotal, I don't have numbers for this, right? Who have told me, I came to the feeder school, I loved it, but it just seemed like it was an elementary school atmosphere in the middle school grades. and they would like to have more what their neighbors have at the public middle school, right? Which is a standalone middle school. And so that's a piece that we picked up just in listening to people, of having a middle school that's just different, because it's not tied to an elementary school, it's tied to a high school. So it makes them feel like it's lifting them up on that. I don't know if that makes sense.
So based on that statement, though, it sounds like you expect, so you're saying that people are leaving the grade school, the Lutheran grade schools, because they feel like it's more of an elementary when it's middle school?
No, I'm not saying at all about leaving the grade schools. I'm not speaking to that at all.
Could you, sorry, then I
Yeah.
just restate them what you
Right.
were
So we're talking about is families, general public school families will come and visit. They want something different. They'll come and they'll visit one of our feeder schools, and it won't resonate with them, because when they look at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they want it to look like the middle school their neighbors are going to. And our feeders don't look that way. They look different, and they're great for it. It's their unique, it is their great differentiator, but they look different that way. Does that make sense? It's kind of like they're at the end of an elementary school. When you come to middle school, at like this kind of middle school, you're at the beginning of the middle of high school years. It's launch pads. I'm not getting through.
So I guess a different question.
Yeah.
How, when you do have people, I know you kind of, actually going back to when you first started talking, you said that during COVID, the feeder schools have really grown.
Right.
So it sounds to me like you're definitely, the way I understand it, you're definitely expecting students to come from the feeder schools to here, because if you were not, then it wouldn't necessarily be a good time, per se, or a perfect time to start the school year. Does that make sense to that?
He wants to draw the people that are just in the public system that don't have necessarily a church affiliation. He's looking for the general public instead of looking for the church.
Right, but, so I guess with what you said, why, it sounds like it's definitely a concern that there's gonna be people coming from the feeder schools to this school, or that kind of what I mentioned, that
Yeah.
would be a good time to do that.
That's a big concern, and you're absolutely right to ask about it. There's no question. And we will never know until we actually do it, right? I mean, we can have conjecture until the cows come home. Until we actually open at grade 6th, 7th, and 8th, we won't know how that really will affect the feeder schools. But I have heard, again, it's all anecdotal, as we listen to people and talk to people about it. I had a friend has a daughter in 8th grade at CCLS next year. He goes, we're not sending her to Mayor's Middle School. All of her friends are there. My younger daughter has friends there. The parents there are our friends. We go to volleyball tournaments together. We go, why would I slip? I'm not going to go over to Mayor. She didn't go to Mayor High School. Yeah, in high school years, she's absolutely going to come to Mayor, he told me. But he said he would not leave it. And frankly, the schools that I've talked to, for the most part, have not seen that happen at their schools in any significant way. Cleveland West has 70 middle schoolers. I think 13 came from feeder schools. Now, 13 out of 70, there's a lot that didn't come. And again, you can't compare everything because everything's local. Ohio's different than Minnesota, right? And so you will never know. You'll never hear me guarantee kids won't come over. I can't guarantee that. But we have enough protocols in place that will probably discourage our feeder parents from making that jump. Does that make sense?
I think to reiterate what I heard your point being earlier, is that because the enrollment at our feeders is as strong and healthy as it is right now, they don't have a good reason to jump ship.
Yeah.
So by doing the addition, while our feeders are also thriving, does not entice people to come away. Whereas if our feeders were all struggling and we were to open, it would be like we were giving them an
Thank you.
opportunity to get out of a struggling situation. So really, the fact that they are thriving is why it makes it a better time to not pull from our feeders.
Thank you, Meg. You said that very well. Thank you. And really, that was one of our early slides, right? Why now? And that's because our feeders are strong. Yeah, yeah, go ahead, just, either one, decide. Tracy.
I was gonna say, wait, no. So my question is kind of the opposite. You're talking about all the expenses that go into this and everything else, and how we are discouraging kids from coming from feeder schools. What would be the encouragement with all of the pros to all of a sudden cut out our affiliation and not be a feeder school, because then our kids can come here, we don't have to pay the teachers in the local schools.
Mhm.
What would be the encouragement to continue that affiliation when it seems like it would almost be more beneficial and cost effective for the smaller schools?
So are you thinking maybe the smaller schools, what you're asking is, would the smaller schools close their middle schools and send their kids over here because it makes more sense financially for them? Is that what you're saying or
Yeah,
asking?
that doesn't work in feeder school either.
Possibly. And by the way, there's a lot of people, that's a really good comment, Tracy, and you're right. That is a concern, but that's not a concern Mayor Lutheran can even come close to controlling. That has to be taken care of at the local school. They have to decide that. There are some people at some of our schools who, instead of expanding their facility, would rather would advocate for this, and that's if they're doing this, but would advocate to send their middle school kids over to Marion for that very reason. Then they don't have to expand the campus. Or they can handle more kids in the lower grades or what have you. But there is nothing that we could say to you, the feeder schools, their boards have to make their own decisions on that. But yeah, that could be a possibility, absolutely. And I don't know what we would do to discourage that,
I mean, does that concern you about funding wise? Because you just said that churches were the largest part of your funding.
Right. Yeah, that'd be very much a concern. And I would hope before anybody would ever talk about doing that, they would invite us to the table with that. Leah, you had?
Well, I guess it's kind of two-part.
Yeah, thank you.
So in talking through this tonight, you mentioned a lot of, we hope it doesn't hurt our feeder schools, and we don't want that to happen.
Right.
So it seems that is a risk that Mayor Lutheran High School is willing to take that may hurt our feeder schools. So I guess what I'm struggling to understand is, why is this a better option than encouraging interested families to enroll in our feeder schools?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, we are already doing that, sending kids to our feeder schools. When people call, we find out where they live, and we have a little feeder school. We don't know what the results of that, however, is, because we just don't always know. Sometimes we find out. It is a risk, for sure. It is a risk, absolutely. There's the other side of that coin, though. Is it going to harm our feeder schools? It could absolutely help. We won't know until anything actually happens, right? It's all conjecture. But actually, a strong middle school environment that has a Lutheran attachment to it could actually help our Lutheran middle schools if they market themselves in that way. I mean, that's a potential, that the quality, the quality that people would see, they think is going to be a draw to the other schools. Is it really? We don't know. We don't know until we do it. If you want certainty, you'll never get that. You'll never get that, right? But we have tried to shave this down as best we could, so that it doesn't cause as many of those problems as they might be. That's the best I can answer for you on that.
Joel, can I just add?
Yeah, go ahead, Ted.
Looking down the road on that question.
It's over there.
Get your steps in today.
We don't want to hurt our feeder school system, but going off your question, Tracy, what makes me think the opportunity is for our feeder schools is if you look, let's say 10 years down the road, and middle school gets up and running, and there is that movement all of a sudden for some of the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, maybe let's say to come here, let's just pretend that would happen. Wouldn't that open space for those first grades, second grades, kindergartens, preschools, all those other grades to fill and grow, and then the whole system grows as a result of that? Will that happen? I don't know, but I do know, looking at what is going on, as Joel said, with some of our feeder schools, and just where the numbers are going, if those schools that have 25 kids, 23 kids in those lower grades are going to go through and they maintain them into their 6th and 7th and 8th grades, they are pretty much functioning at capacity within those facilities. I know my wife teaches at one of those schools, and they're trying to figure out how big do they want our school to be to continue to grow from where they are. They don't have the space. And so they're facing that. Do we build? Do we not build? Do we stay where we are? And so all of that's factoring in. I just think what made me want to speak to that question is there is opportunity. Certainly there's risk, but there's opportunity. What if all of our elementary schools, or some of them, became double graded in 1st, in 2nd, in 3rd, in 4th, in 5th? Right, and they didn't have to build down the road because they had the capacity in their current facility because we were able to get something started here. I'm not saying the initial kickoff is to take from our feeder schools, but your question leads to just dream about what the future could be. And it could be a much larger, much grander Lutheran education system in this area than we have right now.
Thank you, Ken. Well said. Yeah. Who do we got? Dan? Dan, you don't need a microphone. Go ahead.
I do apologize. So kind of digging back on Kevin a little bit here. First of all, I have to say this is probably one of my first times I agree with a lot that you have to say. I'm just being quite frank, okay? That's
You know, it is a first in everybody's life. Thanks, Dan.
So this is that microphone. Use it, please. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So I agree with you. This is, if you're going to do this, this is the opportunity now. I agree with you because the feeder schools are the way they are right now, and the way the public education system is being viewed right now with all some of the topics that teach in the school. Now, my personal experience, public school kid, it was K through 6. Middle school, junior high school was 7th, 8th, and 9th because the high school had too many kids at it at that time in the early 90s. And the high school, senior high school was 10th, 11th, and 12th. So that's my personal experience. And I thought that was great, perfect timing for the maturity of my mindset and what was going on, right? Because when I'm 6th grade, I'm the big dog in the school. And if I got 2 more years there and I'm looking at kindergarten kids, it's a little bit different, right? So right when I started getting that maturity bar, I was kicked to the middle school or the junior high, and I was put back in check again. You know what I mean? And then again at high school. So I think it's a good time for that, and I've had good conversations with my wife about this. My kids' own experience. As you know, Tegan started Zion in 7th grade with Isaac and them, right? Coming from Waconia. He was at Waconia Middle School before he came to Zion. After Sam Schluter convinced Tegan to come to Mayor, and my wife's like, great, he's going to go to Zion now. So this is the thing. You're going to come to Mayor, you're going to go back to the feeder school, right? So Zion was the school because it was on the same schedule as Mayor. Mind you, though, Trinity is not. Trinity is not on the Mayor's school calendar, bus, and all that, right? And I get the reasons why. This is why we picked Zion over Trinity. Also, we're going to have a better basketball team too, right? Back then. But
By the way, this is live streamed. So.
But with that being said, okay, my son coming to that school in 7th grade, coming from Waconia Middle School, was a little bit of a shock for him, seeing such younger kids, including his younger sisters, including his really young sister, that's 9 years younger than him, and preschool at the same school. So he couldn't wait to get over here to Mayor at that point. So in this case, I wish this was already in plan, working when my son was at that point, just for him. My other kids went with Zion, no question about it. Okay? When Danica and Marley went to 7th, 8th grade, they started having a hard time at that level too, just because the same reasons why Tegan did. They couldn't wait to get over here, at that point. So from personal experience in my own house, it would have been nice to have the 7th, I say 7th and 8th grade, the 7th and 8th grade over here at Lutheran High, because now they're the small fish again in the big sea here at Mayor Lutheran High School, right? My son now is at Liberty University, one of the biggest Christian universities in the country right now, actually I think in the world, I guess, with their online program and all. They have an interesting facility there with Liberty Christian Academy. It's kind of like nestled in on the campus of that school in Lynchburg, Virginia. It's K through 12. They also offer learning centers 2 through 5 for that. So you see that from cradle to grave type of thing for school, right? You see that. That's pretty nice. It's pretty cool. And they got beautiful facilities, and it's really, really nice. And I get it. With that being said, that's nice. That's a nice vision. But we do have great feeder schools. I have to say that. I'm very happy with Zion. I'm very happy with Zion, especially from the early ages all the way through 6th grade. And then I started going, I wish they were somewhere else, just because I wish they were in a small fish in a big fish pond type of deal at that point. It's not about sports. It really is not, and I get it. But as a football coach in the Knights program, it is very, very hard to go against these other schools that we're playing against when they have a middle school. And these kids are together all day long and all this other stuff, right? So it is kind of hard with that part, but it's way beyond the sports. I get the basketball program now too, as well as having problems with the Knights because of road teams, super road teams, and Mayor Knights kind of fall into that. We're kind of hearing now because they're not invited to those tournaments because they don't belong to an affiliated school. But as a fan though, Crusader fan, when you're at the games, where's the prep band? Where isn't there more young kids in the drama play and the theater? Why are there more of that? All why? Because they're too busy already at this high school with their activities, including sports, including everything else. These kids are stretched too thin here. If you had the 7th and 8th grade up here, and I keep on going back to that, and I understand the numbers say 6th grade, but with that being said, that would be really nice to have those young men, young women up in the school, involved in the high school band, that young, so they can participate at the high school events, and we have that from cheerleading to robotics, whatever the case may be. It would be nice to have that. We just don't have the kids here for that right now, to support all that, plus play the game. And then to me, that takes away from a little bit of the environment here, which is a great environment already. It would be even nicer. Here's the thing for me. I have seen St. Croix Lutheran. I worked in that area. It's an unbelievable facility. They've had growing pains, but they've done it right. And whatever they come up with, I think it's turned into gold for them pretty much, correct? I mean, generally speaking.
He's doing very well.
With that being said, I do remember talking to Chris Gustin during the middle of the COVID thing. And he says, if this school, I don't know if you remember this, we're in the parking lot. If this school does not open up, if the governor does not let us open up, this school's in trouble. Remember that?
Nope.
You should remember that. because it was going to be very hard to get these kids to come in, their parents to pay that money for them to be at home.
Mm-hmm.
We were blessed to be open, and we have this COVID wave, right? But it's a wave. We're in the high point of the wave right now. The schools are doing really good. It would be a good time to try this, to make it work, in my opinion. But here's the overall question I have with this, is that when it comes down to the feeder schools, and you go back to the numbers before, right? I mean, 1/3 of Trinity's kids come here. 1/3 they go to Waconia, 1/3 go to Southwest Christian. And you probably know the numbers better than I do. The kids from St. John's and out in Chaska, how many of those kids actually come here and stuff like that? And I get that, but they're affiliated schools, they don't like the school. I have a little bit of a hard time understanding sometimes that the argument from the feeder school side of it on the lines of what could be the best interest of Mayor growing for the future and targeting that 98% pool. Like again, I agree with you, don't target their pool, right? But with that being said, here's my 2 questions. One, Kevin said it. If this, like Zion, they're building, they're maxed out. If Zion would come over and say, hey, listen, and I'm not saying they are, can you take on my 7th and 8th grade? Because it would save us from a building project, it would save us the classroom, to double up the classes. Would this school then at that point, or any other school, would you guys look at the tuition difference that you are offering to offset and keep pace with those schools at the $9,000 level? Because it's not the parents' fault that the school's at max capacity. Would you honor those schools to, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm hitting you with this, but would you honor that tuition for Zion? Because they want to move their kids here in cooperation with you guys? Would that be something of a conversation of that?
Yeah, so the question is, the question he's asking is, let's say, to Tracy's point, the school comes and says, you know what, we want to send our middle school and over your place. How would that work price-wise, right? Because we've got to run those pricing to make it work, right, on top of it. And the reality is, Dan, I can't give you a solid answer on that, but I will tell you, I listen to anybody knows me knows I'll listen to any idea. I don't care how crazy it is. work and it can work to the benefit of our kids and school. Of course.
Because that's a significant amount of money difference at that point.
Right,
Again,
and we would always work that out. That's one of the great things about Mayor. We got a lot of smart people to give us smart advice with those things. So the answer to that is, yeah, we certainly talk with folks.
And the other question I would have is target a 98% pool that you're trying to get to. You know, the higher tuition, well, then it should be teaching positions that will be higher paid, more sought out by the local teachers coming to this area, right, with a high expectation for academics and stuff, so those people would not just come here just because there's a cross on the book, but because they're better ready for high school, and to be better ready for going to college, obviously, as you know, preparing the next generation. But I mean, just putting kids in here and charging $9,000 and not being any different to
Right.
the really good public schools that we already have in the area.
Correct. That's always been our challenge for all of us, right? We've got to make it worth the, you know, remember one of the primary things is to make this a great school at a great value at any price, and we have to do that. And by the way, when we opened up during COVID days, the families that came over, they didn't wince. I'm talking about families from public schools who came to our school because of COVID. You know who those families are, many of them. They didn't wince at the tuition. Because when they walked up to the new building, this looked like a school that charges $11,000. And so, that's just one of those, I guess, comment I would make to that. So. Yeah.
I have two questions that are not completely related to each other. My first question is, tonight in your conversation, you talked about a need that is not being met by the Lutheran High School, and that is special education students. And why use your resources to think big and to establish a junior high to meet a need that is already being met by the feeder schools versus working to establish something that's not being met? A Christian school that meets the needs of more special education students, and thinking about, you know, like your whole mission as future leaders and thinking about the image bearers that you could meet that don't have that need met. Because you think of the families that can't come here that want to because their student doesn't receive the resources that they need to go through school successfully. And then my second question is that looking at the numbers, and you're showing these numbers as increases and successes for these feeder schools, and you talk about the difference between the cost of, if we started junior high here, you're targeting around $9,300 per student to cover the cost of education. And we know that the feeder schools have a much lower tuition rate because the congregations are meeting the difference.
They're subsidizing it.
They're subsidizing it. And so my question would be, are you doing due diligence to talk with those churches to say, are your financial needs being met? Are you in trouble despite your numbers? And will this change of adding the junior high, what will that do to the future of your school?
Great questions. The first one, really differentiator question, right? If we're able to meet the needs of more kids with learning challenges, right? I hate special ed. I think all education is special, right? But if we have that, that's a differentiator. We haven't discussed it, but it's certainly something we can put on the table, of course, because it's a need, definitely a need. And again, missionaries who go to Africa, I love this story. What do you do when you get off a plane in Africa as a missionary? He goes, we sink a well. You sink a well, why do you sink a well? Because people come and get fresh water, they don't have it. And while they stand around and wait for the water, they carry it back in buckets and everything. We make relationships, and from those relationships we talk about the gospel, right? It's the best way to do it. So they always tell me, we give them what they want, so we give them what they need. And so that fits your first comment there about that. So I'm all ears for that. I have a great heart for the kids who struggle. I absolutely do. So maybe that will be something that shakes up. We don't know yet as we do that. The second one, conversations with our churches are constant. If you talk to our pastors there, I've been blessed with a great relationship with every pastor at our 12 churches that own us, and several churches that don't own us, right? And they've been very open to invite me to their discussions. We just had a pastors meeting yesterday, and they invite me to that, so that's a blessing. Also the principals, I would say every principal, you know, in our Region 2, strong individuals, and like I said, we meet regularly, and we do a lot of collaboration. Even though we're all very different, you know, especially you get to Wayzata and Chaska, it's a way different group than you get to Hamburg and Northern America. And so that's a piece too. By the way, tonight is just like, we're at starting blocks. I mean, And this is a marathon. So we do have a ways to go. But to your point is, we have listened to some churches. We've had some churches, I can tell you an individual who gave me a spreadsheet that showed if we took the middle school kids from their church, and we charge what we're going to charge, and the churches subsidized them here rather than at their church, so they didn't have to build additional or whatever, that subsidy from the church they're already paying anyway over to here, and a little extra the parents would pay, would actually arrive at the same financial point where we kind of are now. That didn't happen. And so yes, there are a lot of ideas. And I think a lot of them will work. The one thing you need to know at Mayor, we listen to everything, and we contemplate. Ultimately, at some point, you make a choice and you do what you're going to do, right? I mean, but we do listen to everything because we do know, there's a lot of ideas that we haven't even considered yet. So, thank you for that. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know if I answered your question or addressed your things, but thank you. Yeah.
Got me started thinking.
Yeah. Paul, is your mic working?
I get a little confused on your numbers for enrollment next year. You said 25. Do you mean 25? Yeah, we could have a 25 per grade, but you're not talking about that for next year. You were talking about 10 per grade when we were at delegates meeting.
Right.
Which are you shooting for 25 per grade, or do you anticipate more looking at around 10 per grade?
Yeah, if my crystal ball worked, I'd give you a way better answer, Paul. To the question here, the gentleman back asked about what's the marketing going to look like? How's that going to work to bring the 98% to us?
The 10 per grade would make it $300,000.
Yeah, and 10 per grade would be up. If we get 10 per grade to start, it would make everything work great. It'd be a really nice number to start. And there's two things that could happen, Paul. I mean, really, we all know this. I don't think anybody would be surprised by what I'm about to say. It could fail dismally, and nobody wants to pay $9,000 to go to a middle school. Or it could exceed our expectations, and we would turn people away. Or something in between. And the thing is, we really don't know until we do it. The important thing is that we're moving to make this happen. And you know what? We may learn 3 years, dumbest thing we ever did. Bad idea, bad planning, bad. But I think we owe it to our 12 congregations, to our Christian community, to give it a shot. To say this will never work, and so we're not going to do it. If that was the case, we'd be standing in a cornfield right now waiting for Curtis Honerberg to shoo us away. You know what I mean? And so it is a risk. There's no question about it. And for some people, it's very hard to live in that kind of world. I get it. Believe me, I get it. Yes, ma'am.
If this is a success and all of a sudden middle school is pretty full, how do you handle the high school and letting your schools in if you're at capacity?
That's a great question. That's an abundance question. So what she asked is, let's say the middle school takes off. Let's say we have 75 kids in the middle school. And those 25 eighth graders, right, want to come into the high school, right? That's what you're asking. And all of a sudden, though, our high school's at capacity, and we've got feeder kids who want to come. And we have to say, wait a minute, you don't have priority in the middle school does, right? That's what you're really getting at, I think, right? Yeah, that's a very valid question. This is a challenge, I believe this is a challenge all of us are going to be facing in the next several years. We're not in the habit of turning people away. We're not in the habit of having admissions. A lot of schools have enrollment and admissions. Enrollment, you sign up. Admissions is you get in or you don't. That's alien to me in my whole life. It's probably alien to many of us here who have experience at our feeder schools, right? I believe at some point, though, that's something that's going to happen. It's a good problem to have. It's going to be a problem that needs to be addressed overall.
But you can't answer it today.
But I can't.
Handle the feeder schools that are your associated churches.
Right. And that's an issue. If you wanted me to say this is how it's going to be, I can't give you the answer. My heart tells me the feeder kids are part of the gig. They're in. The junior high kids are in.
Paul has an answer.
What's your answer, Paul?
Praise God.
Yeah, right.
We have 25 eighth graders who who want to join our school and we have an opportunity to minister to them, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We're not gonna turn away feeder school kids.
What's the capacity of the school?
We could, well, we could,
Daryl had 300 in one hallway.
Daryl had 300 and Daryl had 300 and half the square footage we have now. So
Now,
300.
Things would have to change, right? We would need to add more staff. We have a lawn up front where we could build more classrooms. We have a lawn to the north where we could build more classrooms. If we're in a position where we have to have a building campaign for more classrooms because we have an opportunity to minister to more kids, praise God. That's what we want here. Absolutely.
Is that financially feasible though? Because if you look at your smallest class right now, your senior class, at 36. If you take your next smallest class on top of that, that's still a 25% growth on top of that because it's 48. You take your largest class, which is your junior, which was almost a 40, or a little bit over a 40% increase over what your senior class. If that keeps growing in the senior high portion of this, is that still doable to maintain your what you're doing academically for them and this middle school? Like, is that financially able to be done?
The answer is, it is financially able. Schools have been doing this for years. If you want to, I'm sorry.
Finding teachers and everything to fill that because
You know, this is not going to be an easy thing. It's not, because you do have to find the very best teachers. And by the way, one hallmark we have at Marin Lutheran, Mr. Willoughby will tell you this, and so Chris, who's been on the hiring, we're pretty picky in our hiring. We really pretty well are. And if you look at the teaching staff, you'll kind of recognize that, I think. And we would continue that habit with the middle school as well. Yes, what's really enjoyable for me right now is we're asking questions about positive and growth and abundance. I've been here 17 years, and for probably 14 of those years, we've been dealing in the other way. When I moved here, we had 233 kids. We had 254 by my third year. And since that time, it's gone down.
What is it right now?
Right now, we're at 179. We started at 183. We just had a couple kids leave for whatever reason. So right now, we're at 179. That's a significant drop. Now, at the same time during that time, our feeder schools, and we don't brag, like people say, Joel, you lost all these kids. Yeah, well, the feeder schools lost more. Well, that's not to brag about, right? It's been a hard time for all of us in these last, before COVID. Very, very hard time. People are moving out here for the public schools and the free public schools, which is not something that a lot of our colleagues around the country have, But I think now what we've been looking at is abundance questions, and that's a praise God moment in my book. I tell you this too, and Tracy, great question. You're spot on. I absolutely agree. I didn't have gray hair until I moved to Seymour, Indiana, and started Lutheran High School, right? And that's all I got, and I'd gladly do it again. I didn't get to your answer, did I? Close enough? Yeah. Close. Let me get to Daryl. Thank you. Go ahead.
So I want to just ask you about the D, right? You talk about being in the circle of 25-mile
Right.
radius. We're in the D, and we're on the left side of that D, population being to the east of us, right? What's your data talk about? I mean, again, Cleveland, St. Croix Lutheran,
Right.
They're in the
Right.
center, they got
Correct.
a big population to draw from.
They got a circle.
We have a good population, but it's way to the east, right? What's your data? How have you been able to track any information about how far people are going to be willing to drive their 6th grader, 7th grader, 8th grader over here every day and pick them up, pick up and drop off type thing?
Yeah, that's a very, so the question, in case everybody, how far will people drive to come to Marin for this? And by the way, I do want to be sensitive to everybody's time, so we have about 13 minutes left, just let you know. If you want to stay after, that's fine. Don't know the answer. The one answer we do know is where our kids currently come from. We plot, in fact, we have a map, Mr. McClintock plots them on a map every year where they come from. So we get a general idea of red dots where they're coming from. We also provide transportation. And by the way, this could be, and we right now we have 3 bus lines that run, 3 van lines, not 2 buses, that run. And our policy has been, we'll send a bus wherever a kid is, so that's what it takes to get them in the Marin. And we've been able to follow that pretty well, largely because we have a remarkable transportation director, Mr. Chris Gus. And so, and we believe By the way, we believe what's going to happen here, Lord willing, that this takes off and all these things, and that we are able to establish it, we believe it's going to be nothing but more expensive. It just is. I mean, we can't run things on it, and we've always been pretty thrifty here. You're on the board with me, I've worked for you for several years. We really try to save money, we try to be as thrifty as we can. But doing this is another one of those pieces that we step into with faith, because we know it's got to be more expensive. We're going to have to send more buses out, or get bigger buses, or drive more miles. And we fully expect that. And again, that's a good problem to have. But right now, we used a 20-mile radius, and by the way, we get our demographics. Lutheran Church Extension Fund has a contract with a demographic company, so they're pretty reliable. I'd be glad to show them if anybody would like to see them. I have it on a video. And we usually do a 10-mile radius and a 20-mile radius to kind of see what that means. Not usually a lot of difference, frankly, between the two, other than is like twice as much, population, but the types of population and the affluence and so forth, those records pretty well stay the same, whether it's 10 or 20. But we have kids from Chaska who come. Now we have fewer kids from Chaska that come because Southwest built a really nice school way closer, and I understand that. And I don't fault them. Southwest Christian is a sister school with us. We do a lot of things together. We collaborate quite a bit. And I don't hold it against them. They've got a great deal for them. We get basically between Southwest Christian and Holy Family, the territory to the west of them is our territory. They don't get a lot from the west either. There's a coming from behind on that. So I don't know if that answered your question. But
I was just wondering how you can capture that data to be accurate, right? Because you can look up the numbers of 98%, looks like the 17,000, but what's the reality? What's the real number that you can touch?
You're right. So I mentioned earlier, we are going to be doing an online survey. You know what that means? You send out 8,000, but if we get 20 back, that's 20 good pieces of information, and that's what we're going to hold for with that survey. And again, we're using a survey that was already successful for St. Croix.
I do think some of the data that we can utilize is the growth we've seen from that D in the last 3 years, partially due to COVID, but partially due to, we hear people who are saying, we're looking for smaller class sizes, right? Waconia is growing immensely. And there are people who don't want to be in a school that big that are moving to Waconia. So we have heard that from people. Some of the political challenges of a government-run school. We're hearing people who have come because of that. As he said, a third of our freshman class is from non-association schools. And so we're seeing that growth. I think that's part of why we feel this is a time that is right to capture that 98%.
Waconia has 900 new lots right now. Victoria is growing, Bonnie is growing. It's moving closer. We talked about 2 or 3 years ago, and you kind of predicted that this would happen, that people are moving to the west more. Go west, young man.
Yes, it's happening. Yeah, Blake, and then gentlemen, what's your name, sir?
Nick.
Nick, thank you.
Blake can speak first. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
You know what? I'm just trying to see who you are under the hat. All right, Nick, go ahead, Blake.